Hi guys, it's Cindy Leach, your polymer clay tutor. In today's PCT mini toot, I'm going to show you how to do the Sutton Slice. Now, the Sutton Slice is a technique that was developed by Pete Sutton probably about 20 years ago. And the first time I ever saw it was about more like 10 years ago, and it was done by Lisa Pavelka. And it's one of those techniques that everyone does now. It's kind of in the commons, if you want to call it that. So you'll see a lot of people teaching it, but it is something that, even though it's a pretty simple concept, it can be kind of tricky to do well. So I want to show you how to do it and how I do it, and some little tips and tricks that will make it easier so you have more success. Now, if you've never ever heard of a Sutton Slice before, or whatever the heck that is, I'm going to show you some examples. Okay, so here are some pieces that are done with the Sutton Slice technique, and I have a few more examples down here too. And what it is a three-dimensional technique where you use two different colors of clay. One is, okay, so the color of green here is done, it's all sitting up. You can see it's a dimensional design. It was pressed into a rubber stamp, and then it was sliced off even from the stamp, and then it was transferred onto a different color of clay, in this case the orange color in the background there. And you can get this very cool dimensional look in all kinds of styles. So I've got like a geometric one done here with like a Skinner blend. I've also done the opposite idea where the black was in the mold and the background was the Skinner blend. So it has kind of an opposite look to it. You can do it in like fancy designs, super fine designs. Here's a big clunky one here. Here's another one that's quite fine details. And all you're going to need is some fresh clay. It should be nice and soft, and I'll talk about that in a second. And you're also going to need a rubber stamp. Now, the examples I have shown you here were all done with this particular stamp here. It's by Tanya's Treasures. Tanya Lenderman is a polymer clay artist, and she makes her own rubber stamps. She gave me a whole bunch of stamps and some silk screens that I'll demo at another time. I haven't gotten to that yet. But these particular stamps work beautifully for Sutton Slice. Partly her designs are very cool, that's one thing. And then another thing is these designs are well suited for Sutton Slice because they are deeply etched. And these patterns, the clay has to get pushed into the design. And if the design was opposite, say these the squares were raised and these were indented, you wouldn't be able to get the same sort of technique. So I'll explain it all in a minute, but these designs are very suited for it. Plus, you can see through her stamps. Other stamps that work quite well, but you can't see through them, are rubber stamps and texture plates. These ones you can see through, but there are some, they're not very deeply etched, and these ones work beautifully, but you just can't see through them, and I'll show you why it's nice to be able to see through. But whatever it is, it has to be unmounted. It can't be mounted to a wooden block because you need to be able to peel up the stamp, and if you can't bend it, then it's not going to work. Also, I was just talking about the design choices. For example, these two are good ones to compare. This one here, the pattern, you can see the flowers kind of go into the pattern, and the lined areas are all the background. And in this pattern here, the lined areas are the designs and the spaces are the background. This one wouldn't work for the Sutton Slice one because you can't really press the clay into those spaces as well. So you just have to keep that in mind as far as design goes. All right, so the clay I'm going to use is souffle clay. I'm going to use the two new colors. I have a video on that if you want to check that out. But I'm going to use the souffle sage and cinnamon. and I did them up into a little Skinner blend. I thought I might as well show you the technique with the Skinner blend because it's a little bit different, but you'll find it easier if it's the first time you've ever done it to just do a solid color and then move on to the Skinner blend. But I might just show you the Skinner blend right now because it's you might as well see the harder version. And I just made it doing a teardrop blend. I used about a marble size of the sage and the cinnamon and did a teardrop blend. I have a video on that. I don't need to go into that right now, but you can do up a little blend. Whatever size a blend you'll need to cover whatever area that you're going to do the Sutton Slice on. So if we do it on this particular pattern here, I want my blend to be wide enough to cover that full medallion there. If you're going to do something larger, like this sheet here, then you would want to make sure your blend was as big as the area that you needed to make. All right. All right. So another tip is that you need to have your stamp or whatever you're using to be clean and dry. Usually when we want to stamp into something, into polymer clay, we want to put some sort of release like cornstarch or water. But if we put cornstarch or water in before we put the clay in, every time we try to slice up the top here, the clay will keep pulling out of it. So the clay actually needs to stick in this mold. So we need it to be clean and dry, but we want our clay to be sticky. If the clay is too dry and too firm, here's an example of how this one kind of went wrong. Okay, so I used this texture plate here, and I used some quite firm Primo Gold, and I pressed it into there. First of all, it was hard to get in, and it kept lifting out of the mold because it was kind of too dry. It wouldn't stick in there. But I did manage to get it in there. But then when I transferred it onto my black sheet of clay, a lot of it just stayed in the mold. And that happens because this one isn't sticky enough to pull off onto this one. It'll all make sense in a minute. But so you don't want clay that's too firm or too dry for your background or your whatever you're putting into your mold. Okay, so I have a blend that is wide enough to fit into this mold, and all I'm going to do is just start pressing it in. And you want to kind of start in an area so that you're not causing any air pockets and kind of work your way through. Now, the nice thing, like I kept mentioning previously, the nice thing about being able to see through the stamp is we can pick it up and we'll be able to see if we're pushing the clay deep enough into those pockets. If the clay kind of gets darker and turns the color, then there's no air trapped in there. If it's all light colored like that, then there's air trapped in there. So you want to make sure that you're pressing it in really deep. If you do kind of trap air in there, you could always just use a pin and kind of poke the air bubble out and keep working it in. This takes a little bit of time, so hopefully I don't take too long here. And see if I can get it in there. Now, you can keep working at it. Maybe I better, well, let's see. Well, I would need to keep going here a little bit longer and make sure that it's really, really stuck in there. But then what you need to do next is take a flat blade and just slice off the top of the surface. And this is where the Sutton Slice part comes in. And when I take these sheets off on a Skinner blend, I'm going to lay them down here and stack all my pieces on top. So let's just take this. I'm going to stack it so that the colors match, and then I can keep using that blend more in the future. So I'm just going to keep slicing down. I'm going to be really gentle and super flat. And I don't want to cut into my my stamp because I would ruin it. And you don't want it to pull up out of there either. So just kind of keep going around, lifting it off. Now, if your clay was too dry, you would feel it starting to pull out of there. But this is coming out quite nicely. And we'll go a little bit further. And then I want to show you this neat little trick. Now, a lot of people, they scrape it back and they continue on, which I will do. But if you leave any kind of any traces of clay sitting on those spots where the lines are, it will show through in your background and leave quite a messy job. And sometimes it's hard to get all of the clay scraped off completely. So I've figured out that, okay, we're close enough here to show you this next trick. Actually, it would help if my blade was off the side here. Okay, so if you have any clay, even just little bits of traces of it stuck on the background there, it's going to show through onto your other clay. So what you want to do, and I haven't seen anyone else do this, and you have to be gentle. So this is some rubbing alcohol. I use the 99%, and I just have it on a paper towel. And what I'm going to do is gently wash off that stamp. And I'm cleaning away the extra stuff sitting on top of the surface there. And you want to make sure you're not gouging out or washing out any of the clay that's in the crevices. But this will make it pristine and absolutely clean. And your background's and it'll look perfect. Also, it makes that clay just a tiny bit stickier. And as you can see, I'm not rubbing deeply, I'm just gently rubbing across. And now it's all clean and perfect. And you can see that beautiful color blend in the background of your clay, or in the background of your stamp. All right, so now what we need is a base to transfer this onto. So I've just got some black, let me grab a new one. I just have some black poppy seed souffle clay, and just going to flatten this out before I put it in the machine. And I just need to roll it out as my background. Now this is pretty fresh clay. It'll be quite sticky. Souffle clay isn't sticky, but you can feel it. There's a little bit of a tack to it, and it's a good base. And you'll want to stick it down to a glass surface or a ceramic tile, something smooth and shiny where it will hold on to it. Then what we want to do is we want to take this and transfer it onto our clay. And we're going to do that by pressing down. And this is another advantage of having the clear stamp, is we can see the black lines are starting to show up really well because it's attaching to that clay underneath. And as we start to peel this up, and I'll show it to you as soon as this is ready, you'll also be able to see if it's releasing. And if it's not, you can put it back down. So what I'm going to do is just, now hopefully the camera can see this well. I'm going to, maybe if I pull it from this way. You start curling up your mold and your stamp. So you slowly just roll it up and pull it up away from the surface and just lift it right off. And doesn't that look beautiful? It looks so cool. So then what you're going to do is you're going to, you can cut it out. I cut mine out with a circle cutter. And then I baked my pieces in the oven just like I normally would. With these other pieces here, I ended up putting a background on it with some texture as well. But you can do the Sutton Slice in whatever kind of shape or pendant or whatever that you want to use it as, and it turns out really beautiful. And you can be really creative. You don't have to just use these types of colors. You can use metallics and all kinds of beautiful color combinations. So I would recommend, because it can take a little bit to get it to release and it takes a bit of practice, I would recommend that you try it even with the same color background and the same color that you're putting on top, just to get the feel for it, so you can smush it all up and just try it again. That way you're not messing up different colors of clay. Or just not worry about it. If you do mess up, just blend it and you have yourself a new color, and keep practicing until you get the technique right. All right, so I hope that was helpful for you, and if it was, do let us know if you like this video. And if you've got suggestions for techniques that you don't understand how to do, books you'd like me to review, products you would like me to test, leave those suggestions in the comment section below, and we'll see if we can make a video for you if we ever haven't done that already. And make sure to check out all our other videos. We have tons and tons of them that will help you answer your polymer clay questions. All right, so we'll see you next time, and bye for now.